And where we finish today the heat transfer course will be the starting point of your process equipment design and drawing 1. That is the next course that you are going to do in the next semester, or maybe next to next semester. So all the introductory part, all the equations that you are going to use, that has been introduced in this particular course. And then you are going to make use of those equations, fundamental equations related to conduction, convection, and radiations in terms of different types of applications. You may have noticed that, sporadically, I have always mentioned about certain applications here and there when we really talked about different types of phenomena. But today I'm going to really focus only on the applications, like how all these theories, how all these how all these fundamentals of conduction, convection, and radiation are taken into the level of different types of heat exchangers. So every 1 hour lecture will give you the idea of what is expected at the level of the industry. Great. Now, apart from that, I think we have completed all the dots that we started with. We had about 12 tutorials. Okay, we had about 2 quizzes and 1 mid-sem examination. Only 1 evaluation is remaining. Is the end-sem examination, which is perhaps, as I saw a few days before, it is on 25th. Just correct me if it is not. You just check the calendar. Right now, there the strategy will remain same as in the mid-sem. So we will have open-ended questions, and set of questions will be there for a group of students, and then you have to give us the unique answers. The pattern remains to be the same for all of you. Okay. This is point number 1. Achha, point number 2 is that after you submit, your submission date for your last tutorial is, I'm keeping on Sunday. I'm keeping a little bit tight here, 14th. You have to submit your tutorials, because after that the evaluation of all the tutorials will be done based on your attendance, tutorial, quiz marks, mid-sem marks. Just before the end-sem marks, you will receive an Excel file where all these are tabulated for you. Please check them and get back to me that that if any of the numbers are missing there in terms of your attendance and all, because after that I will put the end-sem marks and I'll freeze it so that it can be shared with you. It can be I mean, it will go to the grading and all, right? So you just check once all the numbers and marks so that it is all fair and square, right? Any questions you have up to this point? Whatever has been told, any question you have?
Sir, the tutorial will also be shared within the when will it be shared? That
tutorial you will get it by the time I think class finishes. Tanushri, please share the tutorials. Okay. Yeah, you will get it by today itself.
Okay, and we have to submit it this Sunday only. No?
This Sunday, yeah.
Okay, sir.
Okay. And there is no tutorial class on 12th. Okay. So this tutorial you are doing on your own. Last tutorial you received all the solutions. That's the punishment. Okay.
Okay,
yeah.
Sir.
Yeah. One tutorial you should do on your own. Yeah. Anything else? Any other question? Great. If not, then let us start our last lecture, which is the different types of heat exchangers and different types of evaporators. Okay. So overall, whatever we are studying, that has a very big impact in terms of different types of devices. So the first one that we started with, in terms of the heat exchanger, this is a typical. What is the name of this heat exchanger? Can anybody tell me? That there is a fluid that is A that is going inside a pipe like this, and then there is a fluid B that is going from the outside. This is like a. What is this? What is the name of this heat exchanger? Anybody can tell me? Yeah, what did you tell?
Shell and tube heat exchanger.
It is not a shell and tube heat exchanger. It is called a double pipe heat exchanger. It is the most elementary form of heat exchanger, right? Shell and tube we are coming. This is called a double pipe heat exchanger. Why? Because you have a pipe outside and you have a pipe inside. So outside pipe is having a fluid coming like this, and inside pipe is coming fluid coming like this. Now you can see that in this sort of situation, this we are already very much comfortable with, right? So suppose if I look at this particular wall, outside there is a temperature, say suppose the temperature, say we say that A, right? So suppose inside you have a hot fluid. So this TA is getting converted to T1 at this wall. Across the wall you are getting from T1 to T2, and then T2 to TB is inside the fluid B. Fluid B is the cold fluid, correct? And in that regard, we will have different types of resistances. We are now very much comfortable. This is the convective resistance. This is the conducting resistance. This is the convective resistance. If I add them together, and this is for a rectangular coordinate system. This is for a cylindrical coordinate system. If I add the rectangular coordinate system, I get, the rate of heat transfer is driving force divided by the resistance. Whereas for a cylindrical coordinate system, it comes out to be like this. This we have already established, right? Now I raise a question to you that, say, suppose the fluid B is entering from here and fluid A is entering from here. You may see that, both the fluids are going, in the same direction. This is a kind of, this type of arrangement is kind of called a kind of, it's a type of co-flow arrangement, right? This type of arrangement is called, the co-flow arrangement, right? That means, they are going in the same direction. The fluid is going in the same direction. Now, instead of the fluid A going in this direction, the fluid B, if I make it go in from this direction to this direction, it is going out. Then what happens? This fluid is going in this direction, but this fluid is going in that direction, right? This type of arrangement is called the counterflow. Okay. Now, in this sort of situations, you may expect that, say suppose in a co-flow arrangement, what is the temperature? A is a hot fluid, right? Here you have a temperature of TA, correct? And fluid B is a cold fluid, right? So if it is entering from here, if it is coolest at the entrance, so this temperature is TB. So you may encounter here the maximum temperature difference here. But once this hot fluid is cooled down, say suppose this is the TA which is at the outlet. Now this hot fluid has cooled down, and this cold fluid also heated up, that is TB out. So you may see that here the driving force is maximum, whereas here the driving force is the minimum. So you may see that there is a change of across the pipe. There is a change of the driving force across the pipe. Whereas in case of a counterflow, you may expect that this fluid A, which is the hottest one, is encountering the cold fluid, which is going out at a much higher temperature than what is coming in, right? Say suppose in this counterflow, I may write a kind of counterflow situation where the outside fluid, say suppose this is inlet, suppose this is outlet, and this is a counterflow. The fluid is going in this direction and this fluid is going in that direction, right? So here, this is my T hot inlet, okay, and this is T hot outlet. Whereas in case of this is T cold inlet and this is T cold outlet. So you may see that, at the inlet, you don't have the difference. Here, what is the difference? This is the maximum difference. This is TB to TA. This is the maximum difference. And in this one, in co-flow, at the outlet, you may see the minimum difference. Whereas in this situation, this is not maximum and minimum. So this cold fluid has heated up to a certain extent. So the driving force is a little less than the TA minus TB here. At the same time, the driving force here also, it is not the same. So you may see that, the driving force that we were taking TA minus TB, this is for a one-dimensional system, that may not be exactly applicable to this type of heat exchanger based on the type of flow arrangement that you make. And which is the major experience that you need to really get into, in terms of this sort of situations, right? Right. So now, before getting into the co-flow counterflow situation, let us establish one thing, that this Q is the rate of heat transfer, TA minus TB is the driving force, and then this denominator is the resistance, and this we call as a kind of define as a kind of overall heat transfer coefficient, which is defined as U. Okay. Now, when you have heat transfer coefficient, you have done this problem. We have done a few tutorial problems also. You can be written in terms of the inside area and in terms of the outside area. Based on that, you write, the overall heat transfer coefficient towards inner radius and outer radius. One very important factor you should remember, that moment you have this type of heat exchanger, what happens over a period of time, you will find there'll be some scaling on the pipes. That, say suppose you have a water that is flowing on a pipe. Heat exchangers are like, say suppose hot water is coming from outside. So from here it will say suppose hot water is going in the inside, and here you are using a cold water that is going in. So because of hot water and cold water you are using on the walls of this particular heat exchanger, what happens? There will be scaling. Iron will get converted into iron oxide. There will be deposition of different types of dissolved particulate matters on the wall of these pipes. So in that situation, what happens? You may develop over a period of time. Certain resistances, and that additional resistance is called the fouling factor. So U is easy. When you have freshly designed a heat exchanger, you always have a U clean. Whereas, after some point of time, this heat exchanger coefficient, this heat transfer overall transfer coefficient will become dirty, and the resistance will become 1 by U dirty, and the fouling factor is defined as 1 by U dirty, 1 minus 1 by U clean. So, and this happens because of the scaling on the surface. So, for different types of fluids and for different types of materials, right? You have this sort of tables available, and while you are designing the heat exchanger, you have to really incorporate this into account, because when you have installed the heat exchanger, it will remain clean. But over a period of time, this will become dirty. And then 1 minute. Hello, I'm inside a class. Okay, after one you give me a call. So one is so one of the fouling factor. So this fouling factor you have to incorporate, because you have to assume that this particular heat exchanger is going to work for, say suppose next 20 years, right? So if you can add a standard fouling factor there, then your design will be more practical, right? So this is what we were talking about. So let us focus first on this particular aspect. This particular slide is very important, because this will give you idea of three main different heat exchangers. One is a double pipe heat exchanger, second is a shell and tube heat exchanger, and third is a fin tube heat exchanger. And right now, since you are sitting with the entire knowledge of heat transfer, you will be able to appreciate why this evolution is going on from a double pipe to shell and tube to a fin tube heat exchanger, right? I also showed this slide in the beginning of the course, but now I think you will be able to appreciate in a much better manner. So first study that there is a double pipe heat exchanger. What is happening here? There is a hot fluid, there is a cold fluid that is coming like this, okay, and it is going out like that. So cold fluid is getting heated up, whereas the hot fluid, steam as the hot fluid that is coming, and that is getting cooled down into the shell side. Into the tube side, into the pipe side, it is a cold fluid is getting heated up, whereas into the shell side, the steam is getting getting cooled down to a particular temperature. So this is the condensate or cold fluid that is coming out, right? Now this is a typical architecture of a double pipe heat exchangers. So in this sort of situation, you may expect that this fluid is flowing in this direction and this fluid is flowing in the vertical direction. So this type of flow arrangement is called, earlier we said co-flow, counter flow, and this type of flow is called a kind of the cross flow. So one is going in this direction, one is going in this direction. This is called a cross flow. Now, in this sort of arrangement, it was found out that you need heat exchangers which are of very big length. This requires a very big length, because double pipe, you just only have, you are only trying to make use of this hot to cold with a one pass. This is called a single pass heat exchanger, right? Whereas let us focus on this. So now people, when initially heat exchangers started, the heat exchangers used to be double pipe heat exchangers because it is very easy to construct. It's a very simple heat exchanger. But then, people over a period of time, understood that these heat exchangers will be extremely long and not that efficient. So people started constructing more compact heat exchangers. So one of the first compact heat exchangers that came out to the design is called the shell and tube heat exchanger. So what is the architecture here? You see that we will use the same philosophy here in order to construct a shell and tube heat exchanger. What are we doing here? You can see this is the heart of the heat exchanger. In that you may find this white, portions are the tubes, whereas this gray portion is the shell. What are we doing here? So you can understand that, through this, see, there is one inlet and outlet here, and then there is one inlet and outlet here. So we can expect that this is the shells. This outer case is the shell side. So through this one fluid is coming, and through this one that same fluid is going out, which is flooding this particular chamber in a big way. Whereas when I'm pushing a fluid through this, what is happening? This fluid is passing through these tubes. So these 4 tubes are going like that, and then they are coming like that, and then they are going out like that. So you may see that in this situation here we had only one tube and one pipe at a time, whereas in this situation I have 4 tube and 1 pipe at a time. So you can say that you can really put a multiple number of tubing, okay, inside a single shell, so that, say, suppose I am cooling down. Say this is my cold fluid, right? This is my cold fluid, and this is I'm trying to cool down a hot fluid. So using multiple tubes, what you can do, you can really use the same cold fluid to really improve the the efficiency, improve the output, improve the throughput. You can really cool down a larger mass of water per unit time, if you are using this type of compact systems. I just give you one example. So it's like this. Okay, ideally, they look like this. That you have this is the steel joint in which you thread these tubes, and then through this this is the inlet through which the cold fluid is going and through which it is coming out, and then this is separated. This particular disc is separating this end and this end. So you are forcing the fluid to come through. Say suppose the hot fluid is going from here, it is forced through these channels and it is taken out from there. Or you may have a separator here. From the top you will force in, and from the bottom it will come out. Whereas the cold fluid will go from here, will flood all these tubes and will come out from there. So these are all, there are some examples. You may see that this is a typical shell and tube heat exchanger, right? This is the typical, bunching of the tubes, So they look very attractive in terms of the engineering designs. Can anybody tell me what are these, these gray protrusions that are put here? Anybody has any idea what are these? Anybody has any idea what are these called? It is written as baffles, right? So why do we put baffles here? Anybody has any idea? Now you are champions of heat transfer. You have to slowly start applying your knowledge in terms of designing a device. Yeah. Why do we put baffles? You remember, you just check that these baffles are put on the shell side, right? So what are these baffles? Baffles will look like this. If you look at a heat exchanger, they will look like this. That these are some of the baffles will be here. So these are the typical baffles. You may see there is a baffle, there is a baffle, these are baffles, right? So why these baffles are put in here? Any idea? What will happen to this flow? If I put baffle here, what will happen to this flow? I'm forcing a fluid here, I'm taking the fluid out here. What will happen to this flow if I put a baffle here? Any idea? Anybody has any idea?
So one purpose can be keeping the entire structure stable, keep all the tubes that are in proper position.
Very nice. Yeah, that is the main purpose of putting the baffle, because you want them to it's a mechanical stability, right? What is the other purpose of these baffles?
Other purpose.
So
So
you
can
are
it be related to flow, like keeping the flow steady, or?
no, you are making the flow move like this. So essentially, this baffle creates some sort of turbulence.
Yes.
And we know that more you have the turbulence, more will be what? The heat transfer coefficient, right? So you
Yes.
put baffles in order to enhance the heat transfer coefficient. So apart from giving the mechanical stability to the structure, you also make use of the presence of the baffles to make the flow more zigzag, and then generate local turbulence, and from there you extract about heat transfer coefficient. Your idea is now you have to improve the heat transfer coefficient. Once you have established a heat exchanger, more is the heat transfer coefficient, faster is the rate of heat transfer, smaller is the device. Smaller is the device means lesser is the cost of the device.
Okay, so like if we have more baffles, so the entire structure will not only be smaller, it will also be more stable. Like
yes, but more baffle means again you are adding cost to that.
yeah.
So then again you have to restrict somewhere. So this is where the optimization. People ask me sir, why should I study mathematics? Why should I study optimization? Why should I study numerical methods? You can see that in order to learn a subject like heat transfer, you need all. So more you are increasing the baffles, you may see that there are so many baffles here, right? Now, if you can make n number to make the flow zigzag, there are two problems. One is more is the baffle, more is the pressure drop. So your pumping cost will go high. More is the baffle means more you have to maintain all these baffles. You have to clean and all certain. So your maintenance cost will go up. Correct. But at the end, more is the baffle means you will have a larger heat transfer coefficient, more mechanical stability. So two parameters are in your favor, two parameters against your favor. You have to optimize between these two for a duration of 20 years time in order to make sure that you are a good engineer in designing this heat exchanger in an optimal manner, right?
Yes, sir. A middle way, we can say.
So the not middle way, it is the optimal way. You have to
Optimal.
get it, right? It is not the maximum, it is not the minimum. Okay, it is the optimum. Optimum has nothing to do with maximum. Optimum has nothing to do with minimum. Optimum has to do with which is the best possible way, right? Best need not be, you say, nah, I'm the best. Best need not be maximum. This is what you should learn always, as you are growing now, you will see that best need not always be maximum. Best can be, best means it is optimum, right? So you see here, so you see this particular part of the shell and tube heat exchanger is called the header. This is the tube plate you put in where all the tubes are bunched. This is the shell part, these are the tube parts, and these are the baffles. So I hope it is very clear to you what is a shell and tube heat exchanger. Now say suppose apart from baffles, if I tell you I want to increase the rate of heat transfer, what should I do here? Any idea? Anybody has any idea? So baffles are helping us in increasing the heat transfer coefficient, correct?
Yes, sir.
So how do I increase heat transfer, more heat transfer? How do I ensure that there will be more heat transfer? What will be my take? What is Newton's law? Cooling or heating, convection. Q equal to? जल्दी बताओ बाबा, इतना टाइम क्या लग रहा है? You are now an engineer. You are getting you will be getting an engineering degree. Newton law बोलने में इतना टाइम लगता है? Newton's law of cooling क्या है? Q equal to?
HATA.
HA delta T.
HA delta T, right? So H I have walked on with the baffle. Then what are the other things that I can improve upon? I can improve upon A, I can improve upon delta T, right? So now you is, so area, how do I increase? So you can see that in the tube, if I put fins like this, if on the tube, if I put fins like this, what it will do? It will increase the total area of heat transfer. Okay. So in that process, you can increase H and you can increase A. And delta T, I am coming, how exactly you work on the delta T to improve. So, fundamentals of heat transfer remain to be this only. You have to remember Fourier, you have to remember Newton, you have to remember, Kirchhoff's law, and from there, if you are really a good engineer, you will be able to really get the perspective of how exactly things are done. So here, what we did, with this type of pipe and tubing, I ensured that heat transfer coefficient is increased with this type of fins on the tube. I'm increasing too. Now, when I put fins, you know that when the fluid is flowing through this, it will also do crisscrossing and all. So again, I'm going to increase my heat transfer coefficient, and at the same time, I'll also increase the heat transfer area. And in that process, I can really, 1 kilometer long heat exchanger is converted into this small, where I have the similar efficiency. Okay. So construction wise, if I classify the heat exchanger, this is a tubular heat exchanger. Double pipe, shell and tube, spiral tube, these are all tubular heat exchanger. There is a plate type heat exchanger. I am coming to that. Extended surface, these are all extended surface heat exchanger. And then there are regenerative. I'll come to this. Plate type and regenerative, I will come later. These two. So these are construction wise. One is a pipe type. Okay, one is a plate type. So you can see here, this is a plate type heat exchanger. I will come to that. This is a tube and piping heat exchanger. Then you have what? Then you have extended surface, which are all fin tube heat exchangers. And then you have a regenerative heat exchanger. So these are 4 types. The other varieties, you just go through it. There are different sub varieties are there. But then these are the essentially 4 different types of heat exchangers in terms of construction. Now you see this extended surface. Extended surface can be done in many different ways, right? So there are many different types are given, like, this is a kind of flat tube, this is kind of plate fin, this is a circular fin, circular tube, right? And then, once you put this type of stacking and all, so what you do, you put the fins in such a manner so that air also do crisscrossing here, so that, corrugations in the fin. So you are essentially arranging them in such a manner so that, they are doing crisscrossing in this way and that way, so that, there is a adequate turbulence is created. And from there, you are increasing, not only you're increasing the heat transfer area, but you are also increasing the heat transfer coefficient, right? So these are called the surface compact heat exchangers, right? Now, in terms of heat transfer mechanism, you may have different types of heat exchangers. So one is, up to this point, we were discussing about hot water and cold water. So this type of heat transfer is called the single phase heat transfer. However, you know that in order to have a thermal power plant, you need a boiler. What is a boiler? Where you are going to convert water into steam, right? Now, water is, moment you have a boiler, at downstream somewhere you need a condenser. What is a condenser? Steam is getting converted to water, right? So those sort of heat exchangers are called the two-phase heat exchangers. So boilers, evaporators, condensers, these are called the two-phase evaporators, right? So there is a single-phase evaporator and there is a multi-phase evaporator. So let us see what is happening here. Here you may see that there is a cooling water that is coming in the shell side, and cooling water, this is coming out as a discharge from here, right? And then here you may see that, here you have put a kind of, in the exhaust steam is entering from here, and since through the tubings all the cooled water is going in, so on these tubings, what is happening, the steam is getting condensed and you are getting the condensate collected here, right? So this is a typical example of a two-phase heat exchanger, where this is an example of a condenser. The other way around is that you put a hot steam inside, and you say put cold water here, and this cold water is getting converted to steam. That is what is called a kind of boiler, right? You can see here the example is given that you have this is the example of a, I think this is the refrigeration that we have studied previously. right? So here you have red means, you have a cold fluid that is getting evaporated. Okay. And then after compressor that is getting heated up. And then after heated up, like, you are having this refrigerant flow. And then, then there's this metering device and then coming back, right? So there is an evaporator and this is a kind of condenser, right? This is a kind of evaporator, this is a kind of condenser. This is a kind of closed loop system. Remember, I discussed about this refrigeration and this thermal power plant. So there you make use of this, two-phase heat exchangers instead of the single-phase heat exchangers. Right. This is the other variety which I was talking about. That is the regenerative, right? Here you may see this is another type of heat exchanger where different types of transfer process takes place. Like say, suppose take this one. So this is called the direct contact. What is happening here? Say suppose you are doing some sort of coal combustion with hot flue air coming, right? And then what you are doing, you are taking some cold water and you are pumping it here in order to distribute cold water in a pack bed. So you have taken a pack bed through which what you are doing, you are distributing the cold water and you are allowing the hot water to go from the bottom to up, which is the natural drift. So what is happening? This hot air is getting converted to cold air and going out from here, whereas this cold water is getting converted to hot water, and this hot water you are taking out. You are taking out as a kind of this water is getting heated up. You can also convert them to steam. So this is the way you can generate steam, say if you remember, in the thermal power plant. So this is a direct contact. In this transfer process, it's a direct contact regeneration, right? Whereas in this situation, you may see that. Why regeneration? Because, I am converting this cold water into hot water, if not steam. So I am essentially getting high pressure steam or low pressure steam here, after which I can compress in a compressor to get a kind of high pressure steam, which I can blow on a blower in order to generate electricity. So thermal power plant, I can generate out of this unit. Whereas this is, you can see this as a kind of, this is an indirect contact type. How is it done? So suppose you have suppose you have this water, right? So let us see, like, with this water pool, I'm pumping it to a heat exchange plant, right? And then I'm pumping it the warm water here through a distributor. Whereas from the outside, I'm putting the air. So that air is cooling this water down, and that cold water is through this particular air is blowing outside, whereas water through the distributor coming through this and then condensing again here. So with the help of air, I am converting the warm water into cold water, while air is not in touch with this particular water phase. Right. So this is called a kind of indirect contact type, and this is called a kind of direct contact type heat exchanger. Flow arrangement. Earlier we were discussed about this tube, single pass, double pass. I will come back to that. But before that, first discuss about this particular heat exchanger is called the plate heat exchanger. Okay, and you have to be very, very meticulous here. I have another example here for plate. Let me just check. Modify this a little bit. So is it visible? The plate heat exchanger is visible to you?
Yes, sir.
Magnified version is visible to you, right?
Yes, sir.
So let us see what is happening here. So essentially, you may see there are these plates, these longitudinal plates are stacked together. Okay, and all these plates are having certain veins like this. So when I am stacking them like this, so what is happening inside those veins, there is a lot of pipes or tubings that are automatically created because of the groups. Right, so infinite number of pipes or groups are created. Now say suppose I am first putting them, and at the corners, I have these holes, right? And then they are pressed like this. So what is happening? Let us see. Like, say suppose I am flowing the fluid from here. So the fluid is going like this. Say for a hot plate, there are these hot plates and cold plates are rather alternative. You may see that this hot plate is is surrounded by two cold plates. I'll come to the cold plate. Let us see what is happening. Say, suppose if the hot fluid is entering into this plate. So through these veins, it is being distributed in this all the hot plates, and the veins are designed in such a manner so that when I make the compact, it will first go through the, it will flood the entire in-between place, and then it will go out from here, right? And it will go out from here means it is coming back from the other side. Whereas if you look at the cold side, what is happening? Say suppose the cold side is entering here. So it is getting flooded all across in this. So if there is one hot plate, it has surrounded by two cold plates, and a one cold plate is surrounded by two hot plates. The design is made in such a manner so that, you know, it comes down and then it comes out from here. So essentially, you know, it looks like a very simple, it's a mobile like device, a little larger than this. You know, it's a box, you know, shell and tube heat exchanger. You may see that, you know, it's the size of this particular room, but this compact heat exchanger will look like, you know, this type of thing, a computer CPU type. And there you have got this n number of plates that are compressed like this. And those compressions have, each plate has these, you know, these veins, and those veins are connected in such a manner so that one particular groove in between two plates is just flowing the hot fluid, and the alternate one is flowing only the cold fluid. And simultaneously you put hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold in the entire spectrum, so that in one side you are putting the hot fluid and coming back through the other side, and cold fluid is going like this and coming back like that. So this is a typical example of a kind of a plate type heat exchanger. Okay, and in the plate type heat exchanger, so this is the frame, this is the screw press. Okay, this is the metal plates. This is the most modern type. This is called the most modern compact heat exchanger. The small units are there, very costly, right? You know, this plates and all, these are all made of stainless steel, very costly. But at the end of the day, these are very efficient devices. You know, they're used for, like, you know, state of art, you know, heat transfer processes when you're looking for very small space, and at the same time when you're looking for a kind of very efficient heat exchanger is a plate type heat exchanger, right? Now, as we were discussing, when both the fluids are moving in the same direction, it is a called kind of co-current. Right here, you may see the hot fluid is going in this direction, cold fluid is going in the opposite direction. So this is called a kind of counter current. When the fluid is going in this direction and the other fluid is going in that direction, that is called a cross flow. And when the fluid is going like this and the other fluid is going like that, this is called the cross counter flow. So different types of flow arrangements are possible in different types of heat exchanger. Like suppose in this shell and tube heat exchanger, you can expect that, you know, the fluid will be going like, one of the fluid will be going like that, the other fluid will go like that. So you can either consider it to be a cross flow or a cross counter flow. And in all these situations, your temperature difference, your effectiveness factor, your number of transfer units, okay, and your overall heat transfer coefficient and area all will change, you know, based on the calculations that you need to do based on the geometry of the whole system. Okay, so in terms of flow arrangement, you can have a single pass. This is a kind of single pass system. Multi-pass means, you know, it is going like this and coming back like that. You are using the same shell in two pass. That means in tube side you have multiple pass, and in the shell side you have got the single pass. You can also have shell side two pass at the same time. Tube side you can also have a two pass. So you can have two also, right? So in those sort of situations, these are called the multi pass. And single pass, counter flow, parallel flow, cross flow, split flow, divided flow. Multi-pass, you have got extended surface shell and tube and plate. So these are the typical. So this is a multi-pass heat exchanger. It's a plate type heat exchanger, and this is the most modern heat exchanger that is available across the globe. Right. So this we have already discussed. How does it look like? Different arrangement. Just look at it. These are the different examples. This is the one, I think, the spiral one. Somewhere we had given, like, you know, the spiral one. So if you have a plate type heat exchanger, you have spiral, plate coil, printed circuit. So this is a spiral heat exchanger. So you can see that, you know, this comes out like this. It looks like this. So you are just, you know, cooling down like that. Right. So this can be a kind of, like, you know, this is a kind of cross flow arrangement. Like, say, suppose you have the heating or cooling a fluid. You have in these tubes, you are putting a lot of hot fluid, and then the gas, with the gas, you are cooling them down, right? So cross flow, mixed flow, unmixed flow. So these are all different varieties that are possible, right? One very important. So we have touched upon one factor called the heat transfer coefficient. Second, we have touched upon the factor called the area. The third factor which we need to really worry about is the temperature difference. This is where normal simple calculations and heat exchanger calculations are different. Now let us take, like, say, suppose if I have a pipe, and say suppose this is my hot fluid and this is my cold fluid, right? So this is my TH1 and this is my TH2, and say this is my TC1 and this is my TC2, right? So you can expect that at the entrance the difference is TH1 minus TC1, and at the outlet this is my TH2 minus TC2. So this is for the situation when both the fluids are flowing in this direction. This is a co-flow, right? Now if I consider the same thing, that I have a pipe and there is a counterflow. This is a cold fluid, this is a hot fluid. So this is my TH1, this is my TH2, this is my TC1, and this is my TC2. This is what I was discussing, right? So in this sort of situation, you may see that this is my TH1, this is my TH1 minus, I mean, the notation is done in a different way. So I have given it like, H1, this particular fluid is going like in this direction, and this particular fluid is going in this direction. The notation is has done in different way. So here this is TH1. TH1 is the hot, and TC2, this is TC2 is the cold, right? Whereas TH2 is the hot here. TH2 is the outlet of the hot fluid, and TC2, which I have written as TC. Let us write this way only. Let us write this to be 2, this to be 1, just the way they have written. I have changed this to TC2 to TC1, right? So TC2 is the inlet temperature, which is the lowest. This is the lowest, correct? And then this is this TH1 is the highest. So here TH1 is the highest, and this is the lowest, right? If you look at in this manner, so this was, we were convinced. In this one, you may see that TH1 minus TC2. So TH1 is going to TH2, and TC2, which is coming from the other direction, is coming back to TC1. Now here you may see in this arrangement and in this arrangement, the overall driving force across the heat exchanger is not uniform. Okay. Here you may see that the driving force more or less uniform. Here at the inlet it is very high, but at the outlet it is very, very low. Now this is where the concept of, so the question is that when I design, what driving force should I consider, in order to calculate the rate of heat transfer? So the concept of log mean temperature difference comes into picture here. What is log mean temperature difference? We know that, okay, for a heat exchanger, I say that, say at any particular point, this is dQ, this is dA, okay, and the temperature difference, I call it delta Tm, right, which is T hot minus T cold. T hot minus T cold is the variable delta Tm. Now dQ, we also know that, the hot fluid is rejecting what? M dot CH dTH. The hot fluid is rejecting this much amount of heat, whereas the cold fluid is receiving how much heat? M dot C dot C dTC. So the difference why this is losing, that's why it is minus, and it is receiving, that is why it is plus. Correct? Now once that is the case, then we can write dQ is equal to U into TH minus TC, which is the differential element, into dA. Sorry. Now these two equations can give me dTH equal to minus dQ by m dot CH, dTC equal to dQ by m dot CC. Correct? Now this dTH minus dTC can be written as d into TH minus TC equal to dQ into 1 by m dot CH minus m dot CC. I'm just rearranging these three. So now you can replace this U a delta Tm as, so d of TH minus TC divided by TH minus TC is equal to what? Is equal to is equal to, sorry, is equal to, you can write. So dq is equal to UH into TH minus TC dA. D of TH minus TC is equal to minus dq into this. So now if you can, if you just, replace this q with u into this, so you will get a rearranged equation like this. Okay, where d of TH minus TC divided by TH minus TC is equal to minus u into this into dA. Now, in this situation, if you do an integration, you end up getting an equation which is ln of TH2 minus TC2. Now, of course, when I am integrating, I am taking, these are the limits. So those limits are imposed. I get an equation like this. Now, m dot ch, you can replace, the m dot ch is q by TH1 minus TH2. M dot cc is q into TC minus T1. If you replace these two here, what you get? You get q is equal to UA into a temperature difference, which is coming out to be like this. That means TH2 minus TC2, TH2 minus TC2, okay, minus TH1 minus TC1, which is this. TH2 minus TC2 is the temperature difference at the outlet. TH1 minus TC1 is the temperature difference at the inlet, divided by ln of TH2 minus TC2 by TH1 minus TH. So when you have a co-flow fluid, the temperature difference at the outlet, the temperature difference at the inlet, the difference between these two, divided by the logarithmic ratio of these two differences is called the log mean temperature difference, which is the delta Tm, which is the real representation of the mean temperature across the flow. So whenever you are calculating, when somebody is asking, say, for a kind of co-flow, counter-flow situation, what is the driving force? What you have to do, say, suppose for a counter-flow, what you have to do, what is the driving force here? So TH2 minus TC2, this is my outside, minus TH1 minus TC1, that is my inside, divided by ln TH2 minus TC2 divided by TH1 minus TC1. So that becomes my log mean temperature difference. That is my mean temperature difference. So, other than that, what I have to do, I have to add, I have to take multiple temperature differences, and from there, I have to take an addition and then averaging. So you can set up a very simple differential equation in order to really get the log mean temperature difference. Right. Now, one very important factor for single pass, two different types of other cross flow heat exchanger is called the correlation factor F. Okay. Now, what is a correlation factor F? Correlation factor F is a plot with respect to if you have correlation factor F with respect to P, where R is T2 minus T1 divided by T2 minus T1. So these correlation factors are basically, how are you are deviating. Say, suppose there is a fluid at small T1 temperature coming in and for small T2 temperature going out, whereas another temperature, that is T1 coming in and T2 going out, correct? Now, in this sort of situation, you define two parameters, T1 minus T2 divided by T2 minus T1, and P is equal to T2 minus T1 divided by T1 minus T2. And then what you do, you plot, for different R, the P versus correlation factor F. Typically, F is 1. But then for different types of situations where you are doing a cross flow, you end up getting to a number of experiments, you end up getting these plots, and these plots are used for the calculation of the real rate of heat transfer in case of a heat exchanger. Right. Now, say if I go back to this double pipe heat exchanger. What is the difference between a double pipe heat exchanger and a shell and tube heat exchanger? So here I may see there is one tube and one pipe. If I simplify a shell and tube heat exchanger to a double pipe heat exchanger, if there is only one tube and one shell, then that is a kind of double pipe heat exchanger. So what am I doing here? Why this particular unit is more efficient than this particular unit? Maybe I have more number of units I'm adding in order to increase the effectiveness of the heat transfer. When I'm adding more number of units, I'm adding more number of area, okay, more amount of area, and that is what is increasing my effectiveness or the efficiency. So you have to really worry about two very important factors. You will do these calculations very rigorously in your process equipment design and drawing. I'm just leaving you with the thought that effectiveness is decided by the actual heat transfer divided by the maximum possible heat transfer. So any device has a potential, which is the maximum possible way you can do it. However, because it is a device, it will not be able to operate always at the optimal level. So you will have an actual heat transfer. This ratio is called the effectiveness. Okay. Now, NTU, what is NTU? NTU is called the number of transfer units. NTU means number of transfer units. Say suppose you have a double pipe heat exchanger. You already have a cold fluid is getting heated up to hot fluid in order to really cool down a hot fluid into cold one with a double pipe configuration with a single inlet pipe, inside pipe. Now, if I add in the same setup, if I add 2 pipes, if I add 3 pipes, if I add 4 pipes, if I add 5 pipes, I can make use of the same water, okay, in order to really cool down a larger amount of fluid. So what am I doing here? I'm basically increasing the effectiveness of the whole process. Of course, the maximum potential of 1-to-1 I could not achieve, but just by adding more tubes into it, what am I doing? I'm increasing the effectiveness. Okay. Now, if you do simple calculations on this, like the hot to cold fluid and all, so you may get like Q max equal to this inlet minus this, and effectiveness factor, actual heat transfer, if you just plug back in here. So delta T minimum of the fluid divided by the maximum temperature difference in the heat transfer. So effectiveness factor can be written in the form of, if you just plug in these equations, the delta T minimum fluid and maximum temperature difference inside the fluid. So you may also come to know what can be the efficiency of the process. And one simple calculation for a double pipe heat exchanger is given. You can just do these calculations. This is based on this LMTD. This will be trivial, based on the previous equation only. Okay. Now, this NTU and effectiveness factors are two major. Say once you are done with the design, number of transfer units will decide what, how many pipes, how many tubes are there in a shell, how many plates will be there in a plate type heat exchanger. You are given a load. When you are designing a particular process, you are given a load. You will be told that, okay, you are getting a steam at this particular temperature and pressure, and you have to cool it down to this temperature and pressure, and you have this much of budget. So the budget restricts the material that you have available. Now, once you have the material available, you decide that what type of, in that budget, what is possible. Now, in that possibility, the budget will tell you that, okay, you can design a plate type heat exchanger with 40 plates. Right. So your number of transfer units should be around like 35 to 40 in order to make sure that you are capable of using a plate type heat exchanger. Your number of tubes in a shell and tube heat exchanger should be equivalent to this 35 or 40, whatever number you will arrive in from your budget, in order to do this calculation. So for NTU, you will find like different types of, I'm just I've given you these examples that different types of correlations are available. This is for parallel flow, counter flow. N number of experiments have been done. Is enough literature that is a 1 pass, 2 pass, 3 pass. These are for relations for the heat exchanger. Most probably this is for double pipe. This is for shell and tube. So a number of correlations are available based on the different experiments, and the effectiveness factors and number of transfer. Once you figure out the number of transfer units, you can calculate the effectiveness factors for a boiler, for the boilers and condensers, using this sort of equation. Essentially, what am I trying to say? The effectiveness factor will decide how efficient is your design, whereas number of transfer unit will decide how optimal is your design. What minimum number of essentially the NTU will tell you have used the minimum number of passes or minimum number of plates for this particular design in order to achieve the highest epsilon. So NTU smaller and epsilon higher is the is the hallmark of your design. A good engineer is always, will lead to a smaller NTU with a very large epsilon, right? So you just go through these tables. These are all for exploratory. Now you can see that your number of transfer unit to the effectiveness factors, right? The purpose of telling you these plots for different heat exchanger is that if you keep on increasing the number of transfer units, you're not going to gain much beyond a certain point, right? So this you have to keep in mind that there is a limitation. There is a saturation point beyond which even if you increase the number of transfer unit, you're not going to gain much. So that you have to be very, very careful. So all the plots, suggest the same thing. So these are for different passes and all. Just go through them. Right. Now, the most recent ones, the heat exchangers are called the compact heat exchangers. Right. So you can see that, these are the tubings through which the fluid is going, and these are the annulus through which the other fluid is going, and they are all finned, high surface area corrugated surfaces, right? They are used extensively in aircraft, ship hulls, and all the places where huge amount of heat transfer is necessary. Okay. Now, heat exchanger also has a you can understand that the friction factor is another factor. Why friction factor is important? Because moment you have this type of corrugations and all, you may understand that because of the roughness you now know this, the Moody's chart, right? So if the surface is smooth, turbulence is allowed, but if the surface is rough, you may see that it is as bad as a laminar flow. Essentially, when you are trying to increase the surface area, what you are compromising the pressure drop. So your friction will go high, your drag will go high, and then at the end of the day, what you have to do, you have to pump, you have to increase more pumping power. So you are adding additional cost when you are trying to extract heat with additional surface area. So you have to be also careful about what is the operating Reynolds number, and in that, what is the loss? What is the frictional loss? Because that is going to add to your pressure drop. This is one very important factor. So what are the optimal parameters that you have to really worry about? You have to really worry about the pressure drop. You have to really worry about the friction factor. You have to really worry about the Reynolds number. Okay. You have to really worry about Reynolds number means the flow rate. Okay. Then you have to really worry about what? The heat transfer coefficient and the total area. Right. So if you are able to really fix all these aspects, you will be able to do a nice design of the heat exchanger. Right. So what are the design consideration? First is the heat transfer requirement as we progress from the top. H A delta T. Okay. K A thermal conductivity A into delta T. Right. Into sigma A into delta T to the power 4. So how exactly I enhance this aspect? Second point, as I'm mentioning from the beginning of the part, that is the cost. Third is the physical size. Now, if it can be very big or it can be very small. Very big means, you have a lot of, manpower, maintenance necessary. Small means it is easily manageable, but then it can be costly. Right now, small, big, whatever, if you are putting a lot of fins, lot of areas, what is the problem? It may have a high friction, then you have to really worry about the pressure drop characteristics, right? So if you are really understood whatever fundamentals have been taught, and if you have really understood these 4 points and you are going chronologically from top to bottom, because heat transfer requirements will be the problem there, they will be fixing you that, okay, this is where you will have constraints. They will say that, okay, you cannot go the hot fluid, it cannot be beyond 120 degrees centigrade. That is not allowable. So you have a limit there. Cost, they will say that, okay, I cannot spend more than this. Physical size, they will say that, okay, this much space is available. And pressure drop characteristics, again, is associated with the cost. So when these constraints will be given, you will see that certain group of heat exchangers will be suitable for you. And you apply all the fundamental principles that you have learned here with the tricks of the trade, with the graphs, with the different correlations that you have learned here. So you will be able to design a nice heat exchanger. Okay. Great. So with this, I think we finish the lectures, all the lectures, right? It was really heartening to see all your efforts, online. I understand all of you had to brave a lot of things in order to really attend all these classes. And I am really grateful to all of you, especially those who have attended all the classes. I can see many students who are there, who are interacting, in every class. I am very much thankful to all of you for all your cooperation, support, and I'm very sorry if I have bugged you too much, because I like to do the job in a very sincere manner, in a more diligent manner, in a timely manner, so that the benefits to you as well as to your career is the most. This is why we are here at IIT, to pursue excellence. So all these lecture notes will be available with you. All the lecture videos will be available with you. Okay. So I just request all of you to prepare hard for the NSEM examinations. And I wish all of you do very well. Grading will be very lenient if you have attended all the classes, and if you have listened to me, grading will be as good as you can expect. But then, of course, you have to do well in all the exams. There is no compromise in terms of quality. Okay. So with this, I think thank you so much for your attention. The tutorial will follow. Please submit by Sunday. This time, no relaxation in terms of deadline, and prepare well for your NSEM examination. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
sir.
Thank you, 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 sir.
Yeah. Thank you all. Thank you all. All the best. Bye-bye.